for another shot fired.
Copy, additional shot fired.
Shot fired, shot fired. He's shooting at us.
Suspect shooting at officer.
Suspect down. He's at the base of the stairs. White t-shirt, white male.
Coming to you from Northern California.
Negative K, nothing further. Just
This is the Shots Fired Podcast.
Back on that town property case, Moby 76.
With your hosts, Sergeant Kyle Schoberg, retired police officer Mark Redlich, and Deputy Billy. We are America's leading law enforcement resource for training and tactics from experts in the industry. Here are your hosts.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Shots Fired Podcast. I am Kyle.
And I'm Mark.
And today we have an awesome guest with us, Nic Fox, who's going to be talking about drones and how they are playing a crucial role in law enforcement today. And in fact, we're going to be talking about if we think officers are going to be still having to respond to calls and potentially drones taking over.
Make sure you stick around for the entire episode so you don't miss any of the good content that we have.
And today's episode is sponsored by GC Shield Company.
When responding to active shooter situations where you can't wait for SWAT and every second counts, GC Patrol Shields got you covered. Half the weight of other shields, so they are easier to transport, retrieve, and deploy. Has an unrivaled ability to stop edge shots, absorb multiple rounds. GC Patrol Shields are lightweight for enhanced mobility and can easily be connected to create a shield wall or barricade. GC Patrol Shield. Strongest, lightest, most resilient.
All right, so let's jump into it. Nic, so the funny thing is all three of us are sitting here together, and all three of us actually went to the academy together at the same time. So we all graduated from the same academy class. So shout out to 06 BR2.
Empty the cup, never give up.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the terrible saying.
That was our slogan.
Horrible, but you got it right.
Yeah.
So Nic,
ingrained.
do everybody a favor and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, and since you're getting into your career, what have you done and where we are today?
First off, thank you guys for having me here. I really appreciate it. So unfortunately, I did go to the academy with these two. What an adventure that was. So 17, going on 17 years this year.
16.
16?
This is our 16th year, yeah.
Okay.
April
years.
April will be 16.
Got it. 16 years. During that time, stint in patrol. During that time, we had a lot of layoffs, so I was kind of stuck in patrol for a while. Got offered a lot of opportunities. Came from a technology background, so kind of got asked like, hey, how can we improve some of our technology stuff? And that kind of threw me into technology. Developed some camera systems that are around our city that then ultimately fed into our real-time crime center. So I got the privilege of being able to start that up, which was pretty awesome.
That's
it
cool.
Still stands today. A lot of agencies are going to that now. So It's pretty neat to have the first one in the region. I was lucky enough to promote out of that position. So promoted to sergeant about 5 years ago. During that time, again, went back to patrol, did 3 years in patrol, and now I supervise our UAS unit or drone unit. So our agency is fortunate. We have a lot of backing. We have 35 pilots for our UAS unit.
Wow.
So our goal was to try to put one on every patrol team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lofty goal just with the way bodies move around and stuff. So we've been able to average about 30 people that are actively have drones in their cars and are ready to deploy them. This all came from kind of that real-time side of things. It's like, hey, what's the next thing? We have cameras everywhere. What's the next thing that we're looking for? And what can we do to get there? And
what is the real-time crime center you're talking about?
So our real-time crime center is where we just get an influx of information. So the officers are there to support the officers that are responding to calls for service. So they have access to camera systems. They have access to license plate readers, all of our intel databases. So as calls for service are coming out, they can actively provide, hey, your suspect vehicle, which was described as this, we just saw it go that way. And per the LPR scan, it's probably this plate who then now belongs to this person. So It's helping build those cases. So the best way to describe it is that force multiplier. You guys have talked about it. Like manpower is kind of an issue right now, right? Trying to get people here. And so being able to put one person that can provide all that intel is a huge game changer in the field, right?
Yeah.
And you being a supervisor, that's intel that you can help you make your decisions moving down the road. So it's kind of turning it in from that, one-on-one thing, one-on-one sport to a team sport.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And as you guys can see, there's a bunch of equipment here on the table. We've got mini drones, we've got remotes, we've got the headpiece. And we're going to talk about all that and kind of how drones are really like playing a huge role in law enforcement today. It's kind of fascinating, actually. Unfortunately, there's some agencies that don't have drone programs, and maybe we can, or you can offer some insight on how to get jump started into a drone program. I don't know if it's a cost thing for a lot of these departments, but I kind of want to dive into, the impact that a drone team has in a police department, and like what's really the role of, what roles do drones have?
Absolutely. I think to kind of drive that point home, we got to start with how our program started. We had a canine officer on our team, on our department, that was big into the FPV world, which is these little guys right here.
It's like a mini drone.
Yeah, it's the mini drone. It's first person view. So you fly this with these goggles on.
Show the camera. Show the camera.
It's a sport thing. So that started off, you've probably seen drone racing on ESPN, right? They go into arenas and they fly. Yeah. Those guys can fly so quick. It's insane how fast they go. And so our canine officer had this experience and this knowledge, and it was kind of a hobby of his. And I mean, we're talking 2014, 2015, as a canine handler assigned to the SWAT team, he's like, hey, I think this is something we can do. Drones being new in the industry at that time, it was kind of a no-no. Like people, they still had that you're going to spy on me kind of idea. The community really wasn't into it yet. And so it kind of got pushed to the side. As you both know, like anything in law enforcement is opportunity. Like when is the right time to present that? And unfortunately, in our region, we had a series of unfortunate events that took place with different calls for service. Yeah. Like any good agency that's had an incident take place, you look at it and you debrief and you go, what tools do we need or don't we have that could have maybe changed the outcome or supported the mission for that day? And that's when we were able to present the fact that, hey, there's a possibility that a UAS could help us or a drone could help us search a yard, search inside of a house. It can alleviate that force on force encounter or that person to person encounter and provide us more intel that we didn't normally have before. I know from your background, obviously in SWAT, like having that intel of what am I going into changes what your perspective is as you walk into that house, right?
Oh yeah.
It gets rid of some of that unknown. So with this guy, we can literally through any opening, whether it be raking a window or an open door, send it in, get a good idea of, is there someone still in that house? What threats are we facing inside that house? How many doors are open? How many are closed? Anything suspicious in the house? And we do that all in about 5 minutes. And that changes the layout of how we do things.
Yeah.
The biggest win for us with this was that we had a barricaded suspect who was in a house and he suffered a medical emergency, stopped communicating with our CNT folks. And we were able to fly this in there, see that he was unconscious, see that he was breathing well. And it turned in from a situation where we would normally gas somebody to get them to exit the house and gain that compliance to, we're going to rescue this person now. Yeah. And he's alive today because of that drone deployment.
That's crazy.
And so I think that's really, when you want to talk about selling points of things, like that's a game changer for our tactics and provides that intel that we didn't normally have before.
Well, that's a pivotal point when you have contact with a suspect through negotiations or at least conversation, and then it ends. Like something's going on,
correct?
Right? So that's huge. I never got the opportunity to work with a drone. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And, like anything in law enforcement, there's change. People are, maybe hesitant to it, but the upside is that we have a lot of support within our units that they love them now. It's become a dependent thing within our teams. So in our agency, we actually have an on-call rotation with our drone pilots, and they are assigned to our SWAT team. So anytime there's a SWAT call up, there's 2 drone pilots there.
Yep. Yeah, wow. we operate the same. And honestly, I think when these were first rolling out, our department jumped on board with them. And I mean, personally, I don't want to say skeptical, but I was like, I didn't really know anything about them. And so I didn't know what they could offer us. And then being a canine handler, I learned really quickly. I was like, man, there's not always air available. So let's launch these things. And I mean, they're not as good, but I mean, damn near, right? I mean, I found really early on these things were a huge asset doing searches for bad guys in backyards or whatever. So I jumped on board pretty quickly with them. And then, as time went on with these drone programs, they've really grown, right?
Absolutely.
Into these little mini drones. At first we didn't have those and now we do. And like you said, I mean, every SWAT call out, all that stuff, like you're going to get a drone operator there. So, these things have really grown in departments. We were kind of talking offline a little bit about, there are some agencies. There's an agency specifically down south. I think it was Chula Vista.
Chula Vista PD, yeah.
Who they have they've taken this to the extreme.
They have. They're actually a model agency throughout the nation. They have a program that's called DFR, so Drone as First Responder. And the idea is if they have a call that meets their criteria, they will actually launch the drone as their dispatching officers to it.
So like any call for what do you mean by criteria?
So theirs is and I don't recall their exact specifics, but violent crimes in progress,
Okay.
felonies in progress. They have a set criteria within their policy that says, hey, these are the calls that we're going to send our drone to with our officers. Or maybe we can clear that call with the drone so the officer doesn't have to go to that call and they can go to this one instead.
Wow.
So on average, they launch about 1,000 times a month.
That's crazy.
That's 1,000 flights a month.
That's insane.
Last I checked, they had 4 or 5 launch sites across their city. Their city's fairly small.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's a big city.
It's not, but the way that they're able to cover their entire city with 4 drones, they can actually cover air resource, and they don't have an air unit within their city. So this is their air unit. They've also interlinked that with their dispatch system. So they can get the live feed into their cars as they're responding to the call.
From the drone.
As well as they have a system called Live 911 where they can listen to the call taker talking to the caller and getting that information in real time opposed to having to read it across the screen.
Or the delay from the dispatch.
Correct.
That's pretty wild.
So they've had numerous cases where they've been able to, someone calls in, hey, guy's got a gun, right? The UAS goes up, it's overhead, it can zoom in and go, no, it's not a gun. It is a cell phone. It's a lighter. It's this. So
Dang.
Totally changes the response, helps limit the chance of a force on force encounter. Like it really changes, or de-escalation, right? With the mental illness going up and the cases of that officers are being called to.
Yeah.
Huge use case for it, of being able to de-escalate that situation as well.
That's pretty crazy.
Do you think you run the drone team, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So do you think is your goal to go that direction?
So our city's unique. We still have manned aviation, but we're also heavily treed. So Chula Vista is a newer community out in kind of the high desert-ish out north or east of San Diego. So their tree coverage isn't as much as ours. So there's parts of our city where I think, yes, we could absolutely run a DFR program and it would be beneficial. I don't necessarily think we could get to the coverage that they have.
Yeah.
And it's just purely logistical on equipment and things like that. But I absolutely see a place in each community with it. The other thing that's interesting is they've also been able to integrate these DFR programs with ShotSpotter. So ShotSpotter is that electronic shot detection software, right? Mm-hmm. They've been able to take that and add it as a pinpoint so the drone knows exactly where to go fly to.
That's crazy.
So it could even pick up a car and then potentially follow.
Area. Yes.
That's wild.
So again, because a shots fired call is one of those highest priority calls you're going to go to, right? You know a firearm is involved.
Yeah.
So now you have an aerial platform above that's giving you intel before you even roll into there.
And most people on the ground probably have no idea it's even there.
Correct.
Yeah, I do find that. Yeah, usually people have no clue that the drone is even flying overhead.
There's very few cases. We actually had an interesting case recently. It was a burglary in progress. It's the first time I've ever seen it. And it's the first time our air ops guys had seen it. The suspect brought a thermal blanket with him.
No kidding.
And tried to cover himself.
I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah, like so one of the runner's blankets.
Yeah.
So after you go running, and tried to cover himself with it to block his heat signature.
Did it work?
It did and it didn't. Like it worked in the sense that it wasn't showing a human form.
Yeah.
But it was an anomaly on the screen. Like
so
it was abnormal, but it was still like these guys are getting smart. Like
that's crazy.
Coming up with new ways to outsmart us.
Yeah.
And the technologies we use. So we kind of got to keep ahead of them. And this is one of those tools that's going to keep doing that.
That's interesting.
What does it actually take for you to launch this thing? Can I just say, hey, Sergeant Fox, can you bring a drone over? I want to just look in the backyard. Or
so there's kind of two parts to that. One is the legalities, and then the other one's the FAA. So we'll start with the legalities. There's still Fourth Amendment stuff that we have to follow. the courts still rule that anything below 400 feet where you're using an electronic means to make view of something constitutes a search. So we have to have either a exigent circumstance or we have to have a search warrant to do it. So for our organization and pretty much every organization in the region, when they do their search warrants for SWAT or anything like that, they add the UAS language in there. So that way we're covering it. Because oftentimes what'll happen is a UAS will be overhead as the team's approaching, right? So theoretically, we've started our search of the backyard prior to the team serving the warrant. So it gives us that leeway.
And you're saying that's below 400 feet?
Because the FAA requires that all UAS fly below 400 feet. So it's automatically putting us within that range that the courts are saying is a search.
How high do you, as a general flight?
So it depends. So to the next part of that question is the FAA, right? So the FAA says, hey, depending on where you're at, we have restrictions on how you can fly. So in our region here, there's 4 airports. And 4 of those airports within their controlled airspace touch some part of our city.
Yeah.
So we have what's called a COA, or Certificate of Authority. And basically that is the FAA's agreement with us and the airports to rewrite the UAS rules so we can fly within those controlled airspaces. And that doesn't mean we always just can launch whenever we want. There's still restrictions in there. And there's these things called Lance grids. And what that Lance grid is the FAA and the airport got together and go, hey, if a drone were to fly here, what's the highest altitude you'd be comfortable with? And the airport manager and the people that run the airport go, you know what, in that section right there, 100 feet, we'd be good because it's not going to intrude on aircraft taking off or landing or airport operations. So our pilots have to abide by these Lance grids. So there's times where they will fall in what's called a 0 Lance grid. And generally that's at either the approach or the takeoff of the airport, right? So where the plane's the lowest to the ground.
Yeah.
When it's 0, our pilots actually have to call a number, and that number goes to DC. And there's about 8 or 9 people in the country that can authorize us to launch from that spot.
Okay.
They'll say, we'll tell them what we need, why we're doing it, who we are. And they will actually call the airport and they'll say, hey, we're going to have this agency is going to be here conducting this mission. We gave them up to 75 feet. And the airport's going to sign off it. They're going to call you back and say, yep, you're good to go.
Damn. That's crazy.
So as much as people look at these and they're like, hey, yeah, that's just a toy.
Yeah.
The FAA looks at this and goes, there's no difference between this flying in the air and a 747 full of passengers. To them, it's just an aircraft. It doesn't matter who's on it or what's on it. It's all the same.
So that brings up a good question of what does it take to become a pilot to be able to fly a drone for an agency?
So some agencies will go 2 ways. If you live in an area where there's no airport, you generally don't need a COA because you can fly what's under Part 107, which is basically the commercial licensing for drones. So if you are a Part 107 holder, you might be working law enforcement. You might be a photographer that takes pictures. Anytime you get compensation for flying a drone, you need to have a Part 107 certification. The interesting thing with a COA is a COA allows you to self-certify your pilots. Well, that's pretty complicated, right? I got to teach a guy that's never flown before how to fly and what rules to use. And I got to come up with the curriculum and all that stuff.
And you get to use this remote control and
Correct.
You don't get to look at it.
Yeah.
That's too much work for me. So what we do in our organization is all of our pilots are Part 107 trained, and we use the FAA's Part 107 rules as their licensing to fly for our organization. And it's a legit test. We do it through an online testing platform for our guys, and they have to go and you have to score at a testing center for the FAA, the same places they go to get pilot's license and get tested for pilot's license. They have to go and take that test.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, I know the guys and gals at my department that are all licensed to fly them. I know it's a big deal and they do a lot of studying and it's stressful. And I've heard about some of it, but it's kind of wild actually to think hey, hats off to anybody that does it, because I know it's not easy to do. Yeah. I mean, I know the test it sounds like it's pretty difficult.
We've had, I think 37 people take the test, and we've only had one person have to take it twice, and they passed it on the second time.
So that's good.
It's a really successful program if you find the right study material.
Kyle took a couple tests in the academy 2 times.
4.
That's okay.
4 different tests twice.
Guys, I'm still here. I still passed, right? That's all that matters.
No one remembers.
Yeah,
C's
dude,
degrees.
Yeah, D's for degrees, dude. Come on. So I know there's like a bunch of different style of drones. I mean, obviously this would be considered a mini drone.
Yes. So we call these our micro drones. And That's our terminology for them. Kind of in the drone world, it's called a cinewhoop. And basically, if you've ever seen the videos of like people flying through, I think there's one out there of a bowling alley, somebody else flying through like locker rooms or things like that, where it's very cinematic. This is the kind of stuff that they're using. Might not be this small, but it's kind of the same form factor. We've kind of dumbed it down, repurposed it for slow and low flying inside of a house. So there's guys out there that can take this thing, change the parameters on it, and start doing flips and stuff with it. That's not us. The next level up for us is it's your standard like commercial purchase drone. Like there's nothing different that you would buy or I would buy that we're using out in the field. We spend a little bit more money so we get that forward looking infrared kind of view of it, find those hot spots. But anyone in the country can buy the same drones that we fly. Yeah. And then the real big one, which is the big step up, is our large frame drone. And basically the purpose for that is it can hold a much better camera. It's got a nice zoom lens on it, and it can hold a nice spotlight on it. So it kind of mimics that air unit look. Yeah. I know we have one of those in a drone platform. Cool. Yeah.
How big is that? Like 3 feet? 5 feet?
It's probably about 3 feet across.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty big.
And it's got about a 45-minute flight time. So it gives you a good amount of flight. It can fly in wind, it can fly in rain. So especially in this region, that's important to us. Yeah. And low temperatures, high temperatures. So there's been times where, depending on the weather, our airship can't launch due to like fog and things like that, where we might be able to launch a UAS or a drone right there because we can see it. We have the visibility to do it. So we can get one out faster than the air unit can get there. We're super fortunate in our organization. We have a great working relationship with our AirOps guys. They support us, and they're actively involved in the training of our new drone pilots. So part of our training program is that they have to go spend a whole day out with our AirOps guys, and our AirOps guys review all the test material for their Part 107 test. So they can ask any questions, they can go over sectional charts, they can talk about what it really means to fly a drone in the national airspace. And then on top of that, we have good relationships with our FAA representatives, and they also come in and do a little talk to them as well. So they understand that this isn't just going to go throw this toy up in the sky.
It's not a toy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's way more than that.
There's ramifications for what you do when you put this thing in the air.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked that the Nic Fox that I went to the academy with runs this and created the entire program.
Who would have thought that?
That's wild.
Who would have thought all three of us would be sitting here right now doing a podcast, 16 years later of being in the academy? I would have never thought that.
I was just hoping day by day to get through the academy. So.
I know, me too. I just can't. I left before this came out. Well, I do remember some of it in the talks of it, but I'm blown away the capability and how complex the whole system is. That's why it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Hey, so I mean, if I know one of the biggest, I think, hurdles that a lot of guys, at least at my department, when they were getting involved in this, we don't have an air unit. You know, we rely on you guys and you know, other surrounding agencies that do, but the searching, right? Like using the drone to do like an accurate, good search. So I want to give like some people out there some advice if they're current drone operators or they want to be a drone operator. Again, going back to a hurdle that I saw some of our guys have was how to properly search. And my best advice to them was go hit up the air unit guys and how do they do it? Is there any advice that you would give that like maybe to
I think
help somebody out?
You nailed it 100% is talk to your AirOps guys.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, but I can kind of touch on a little bit more than that though too. So in our organization currently based on staffing stuff, like our patrol guys, like 80% of them have less than 5 years on.
Yeah.
So that's really there's not that much knowledge as far as searching. I mean, I can think of times when Mark and I were searching yard to yard numerous times in a shift. Like that's not happening much, and you know it as well as I do.
That's just because you couldn't catch people.
Well, that's true. I
always caught the people.
I sent you after people.
Little leprechaun.
I drove, you ran. Okay?
Yeah.
But what I find with our pilots, because they are new and younger, is they get impatient.
Yeah.
Patience is the biggest thing to searching with a UAS or even an aircraft, right?
Yeah.
You have to be systematic and you have to be patient. And if something looks out of place, you have to tell somebody. We have times where I've noticed our pilots, they don't, hey, there's a shed in this backyard, or hey, there's these trash cans that don't look right. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
We find with my young pilots that come to our unit that they're kind of shy on the radio. They don't want to sound silly.
Because they don't want to sound dumb. Like, I don't want to say if it's not,
Correct.
it's like, no.
it's the hardest thing to break is our supervisors in the field look at the UAS pilots the same as they look at the air unit, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like those are big shoes to fill, because the guys in our air unit have been there for years and have thousands of hours of searching. You're a fresh drone pilot that just started doing this, but you have to act like you've been there for 1,000 years, and
that's
that
hard to do.
have those hours, and you kind of own it, right? It's your skill. You have to own it. I mean, I was never a canine handler. I will never try to be one. But when the canine handler gets on scene, it's like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing because he's been doing this, right? You got to own that role. And I think we have to build that into the UAS stuff. It's just so new that it's kind of hard to do that. Yeah. So we're getting there though.
Yeah. I think you nailed it when you said that, that, you know, being a canine handler and relying on the drone guys or the air guys is, call it out if you see something that's, out of place, or, you know, you think you may think something, maybe a hot spot or whatever, like, don't be shy about calling that out. And I remember as a handler telling guys that, like, no, I want to know that, because I'd rather check it and have it be a compost pile or nothing than it being the bad guy. And, you know, you were too afraid to call it out on the radio because you didn't want to be wrong.
The other thing too is training with those units. Don't make the first time that you guys work together be that critical call. Have those trainings together, schedule them, make sure they get done. Because we had one recently with our canine guys, and we were able to work out a bunch of kinks with backlighting, with using a spotlight with our canine guys. And hey, how are we going to do that? What skill? And we actually came up with a good conclusion to that is, instead of putting our suspect in the middle of a spotlight and potentially having a bleed over, hey, if our contact team is going to be approaching from the left, put the suspect on the left side of the spotlight and put all that excess light to the right. Yeah. So now our contact team is still in the dark as they go up to approach the suspect, and we're not backlighting everyone. And it was like, it took 10 minutes of us working together to go, well, that was easy.
Yeah, that was a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah. But if you don't get together, you don't find that stuff out. And then, you know, you're kind of mitigating, well, officer safety stuff, but
that, and you're ruining your credibility.
Yeah.
Because that was what was happening with our guys, is they weren't feeling credible and our canine wasn't taking them seriously because we hadn't done enough training together, and we hadn't been able to work out those small things that were annoying them, that we didn't even know were annoying them, because we hadn't had the time to work together and talk about it.
Yeah.
So what do you do? You're lucky enough to have these partnerships with the canine air unit and all that resource available now. What do you recommend for those agencies that don't have an air unit, that are in rural areas? How could they train?
So the other way that we've trained in this region is we have a regional training group with UAS. So we're fortunate that almost every city that touches in this area has some form of a UAS program. And we try to get together about quarterly and have group trainings, because the chances are someone in that region is going to either have a canine unit, going to have an air unit, and get together, because they're also going to be the units that you call upon when you have that big deal, right? So when you have that BFD and you need all the resources there, you're going to have people coming out of the woodwork. And if you've never worked together before and you don't know the capabilities or what they're bringing to the table, it's kind of going to be a shit show for a little bit. But if you've already worked all that out and you've had those conversations and you know, hey, I have this, or well, I have this, well, cool, we can do it this way, then it makes things flow a little better. We work really well with one of our partner agencies, and we often cover each other on calls. We also cover each other's SWAT teams, and there's no questions about how we operate because we've done it so much together.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And, you know, like you just said, I mean, shoot, I know in the region, if you're calling for a drone, you could get somebody from, I don't know, you name it, some random agency, not your own, and you're going to get a couple pilots there. So I think that's cool that you guys get together and you're all on the same page, because we all help each other out.
And on top of that, not just be on the same page with like tactically, but this stuff is changing day to day.
Oh yeah.
Like the FAA is changing rules. They're adapting, because drones are great in law enforcement, but who's the next big player that's using drones? Walmart and Amazon. And they're really affecting how drones operate, because they need to get them into the air and be able to do it safely and autonomously. So that's really changing the game on how things work. And so the FAA is adapting to that world. So I learned the most from being involved in all the other agencies in the region that are, hey, I heard this, or I learned about this. And then there's also a lot of online forums for law enforcement with drone use that you can get involved in, and they pass information around, and it really will help build your game and justify the need for your UAS unit.
That's wild. That's a very in-depth program.
So let's talk like costs. Like what is all this cost to run a drone program? And more importantly, there are people that I know listen to this that want to have a drone program, but I know they probably don't know how to get started. I know Mark and I have gone and taught at some agencies up in Oregon, and that was a conversation that got brought up. They don't have them, and they were kind of like, they didn't know where to start to get them.
So one of the first things I'll throw out is I'm a member of an organization called LEDA, Law Enforcement Drone Association, and they're a nationwide association, and that is what they are big on, is helping people get programs started. They have a whole online library of all the documents, forms, the how-tos, all that good stuff. So it's a collective of where all these officers have come to. So I highly suggest people check that out.
Do they have a website?
They do. It's I think it's LEDAUSA.org.
Is it LEDA or
LEDA?
Okay,
Yeah.
We'll put that in the description.
I think it's huge. It's a great resource. The other one is droneresponders.org. They're another one that was started by a retired fire captain. And they're great because they have a lot of political pull as well. So they get really involved in the political side of things and help shape policy and shape FAA rules. As far as pricing goes, so you're looking at what we consider one of our micro kits. And in each one of our kits, we have 4 aircraft. So 4 of these guys, a controller. We use this as a monitor. So what'll happen is your pilot will be viewing this, right? Straight on his eyes.
Yeah, wearing
first person view. He's immersed into flying. We'll take a tether off of this and into this guy, and I'll have a SWAT team member that'll watch what I'm seeing. So he can do 2 things. A, if he wants to see something that I don't see, he can tell me, hey, go left. I want to take a look at that again.
Yeah.
Or he can call out what he sees to the other members. And like I said, we have 4 drones. So if I down one of these in the house, that's great. It can stay there. I got another one in case. I pop it up. I do a couple button presses, and we fly another one in.
Can you still view that one too?
No, we cut this one off. That one's done.
Yeah.
So, and generally what happens with this is if we down one of these, it's either upside down, stuck under a couch, behind a couch.
Or maybe the battery died.
Battery died. We try to be cognizant of that, but the worst is bathrooms. We generally clear bathrooms last.
Yeah.
Because there's generally open toilets in bathrooms. And for whatever reason, it's like a target. I mean,
That's so funny.
Not a good spot.
So what would this cost? What would this kit right here, one of these cost?
About $3,500.
So honestly, that's reasonable. That's not for what it does and what you're gaining out of it. I think $3,500 is, I mean, shit.
No,
you're gaining a lot.
You're getting a lot of intel out of that. And so then the next level up would be kind of your consumer grade. And we use DJI at our organization. They've maintained themselves at the top of as kind of the best. And they're priced right. So a kit that our guys carry around in the back of their cars, it's about $5,000. So that's for
a little more pricey.
A little bit more pricey, but you're getting more flight time. You're getting a better camera. You're getting that forward-looking infrared. You're generally getting a spotlight or a speaker on it so you can communicate with suspects, at least give them commands. And then the next level up from that, kind of in the DJI world, it's what's known as the M30, so the Matrice 30. And it's about $17,000.
So, okay.
But that can fly in the rain. It can fly in high winds. It's got a 45-minute flight time. And the infrared on it is almost as good as a helicopter's.
So really, if you really think about it, I mean, I know $17,000 probably seems like a lot, especially if you're someone that's presenting this to, I don't know, your chief or city council or whatever. You're trying to get them to buy off on this stuff. Sounds like a lot of money, but the end result in the safety aspect of it, and like you said, like probably minimizing use of force. What you gain from that is, I mean, that's so cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, dude,
what you can save. I mean, we
couldn't fucking buy a helicopter for even remotely close to that. It's probably not even less than fuel.
So with these, we've saved SWAT callouts from doing this, right? Because we've been able to fly into houses. Well, we did the math. A SWAT call, it's about $20,000.
Yeah.
Just in
overtime, whatever. Yeah.
Everything like that. The other thing I'll suggest to viewers too that are interested in getting programs started is checking with your local businesses, Walmart and some of your local hospitals. Some of your major corporations will donate money to get programs like this up and running. So it's a resource they can tap into. There's grants out there to get programs started as well, both federal and state level grants. So the money's out there. People are willing to give it up. You just got to go ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And awesome. I think there's such a great asset. And for those of you that don't have drone programs, I mean, if you're even remotely interested in it, I would seriously look into it. We'll throw some video footage up that we have. I know I've got some footage of some canine apprehensions using, with some drone footage, and you can see how crystal clear some of this video is. I mean, it's freaking insane.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can see from it. I would say the other thing too, if you're going to start a program, you got to have thick skin. because you're going to have your naysayers. You're going to have your people say, we don't need that here.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that. My first micro deployment of one of these, it was with a SWAT deployment. And I'm like, okay, I'm fresh to learning how to do this, but I'm excited. So I'm stacked up behind the Bearcat and they're like, all right, we need you to fly inside. I'm like, cool, wide open door. No problem. I got this.
Boing, freaking hit the door.
Didn't even get to the door.
Oh my God.
Put it up on top of the Bearcat. I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm sitting there. I got the whole SWAT team behind me. And of course, like any good SWAT team, they're heckling you.
Of course.
They're in your ear.
The damn
And
SWAT guys.
I launch it and I kid you not, it went up about 50 feet. And then I was like, oh my God. Came right back down, smacked right on top of the Bearcat. And everyone's like, really?
It is
Really? Just
exploded.
No, luckily it could still fly, but I was like, well, that was embarrassing.
Yeah. Yo, guys, sorry. Test run.
Glad I got that out of the way.
I've known you for a long time. You've done a lot more embarrassing things than that.
Hey. When everyone's watching, it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
But like you gotta be ready for people to.
Did you get it in the house?
I didn't get it in the house, and then I crashed
okay.
on the stairs. But I was as I played
Twice.
it at that particular time. I said, "No, I'm just perched here to make sure no one comes down."
Yeah. I'd be like, guys, I'm holding the stairwell. You guys are clear.
Exactly. You guys take care of downstairs. I got the stairs.
Yeah.
They're good.
That's
Come
funny,
on. Yeah. Dude, so I mean, just show off the remote real quick, just to show like how. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
So-
and the crazy thing is, you can't see that with these goggles on. You have to
Correct.
memorize this
You
stuff.
have to memorize where the buttons are. So a lot of this is this is the arming of the motors down in this way. When we talked about downing this inside and having to replace it, so we have a little switch here that actually cuts off a relay in there and kills the video, so the next video can link into it.
Yeah. Wow.
If it does flip upside down, there is an option to what's called put it in turtle mode, and theoretically you should be able to right it back up and take off flying again. Not always 100% successful. And then we have a rate mode over here. Theoretically, we like to fly nice and slow, but at times if you're going from outdoor to indoor, like you need a little bit more power to get there. And this is how you know how to adjust it here, and you can provide a little bit more. So you can get through the wind, get inside, and then slow it back down again.
Wow.
So it's just understanding the functions of each thing and how they work. The nice thing about, the thing to remember about these, it has no computer in it. So unlike your DJI drones or your stuff where it kind of has computer aided flying, this does not have that. Everything is stick input only. So you have to find what works for you as you fly. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place. So I made adjustments to mine specific to like what's comfortable for me, and it smoothed my flying out. Like now it's much smoother than what once was because I'm not trying to correct. It's customized to me. So we don't once you have a kit, we don't hand them around. Like that's your custom kit. You hold on to it.
So you're not sharing.
No, we don't share, especially when it comes to the micro stuff. We don't share because each pilot sets theirs up slightly different because it doesn't have that computer aided stuff in there.
So what do you think departments should start out with? Do you think they should start out with a micro kit? Because I feel like there's a lot more function that you can do with this, and it's cheaper. Or do you think?
So I think it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to fly inside, so I wouldn't go this route if you want to fly inside. DJI actually came out with a new aircraft and it's called the Avata, and it's a little bit bigger than this one. So it's about twice the size of this, but it can still fit through a window. It can still fit through a partially open door. And it's got all the technology to the flight stabilization technology in it, and you still fly it on the goggles. But it's easier. There's no learning curve. It's like flying a normal drone. So you don't have to learn all the stick stuff and all that stuff. It's much more automated. I would go with that because that's about $1,300 for a kit.
So that's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
Easy to fly. Just
Easy
kind
to
of get
fly
it up and go.
and it can fly indoors. There's some lighting kits out there, some aftermarket lighting kits. So even in dark environments, it'll still be successful. Because that's one thing ours has. We have these little LED strips because we learned real quick that trying to fly in a completely dark place is pretty hard. But this Avata, you can add those on. So it's a great starting point where you're not quite this small because, I mean, we get up into attics, we get into crawl spaces with these, and you can do it with the Avata with some practice, but I think it's a great way to start if you want to fly indoors. If you're just purely trying to fly outdoors, keep that Overwatch mentality and do that stuff, then I stick with something like the Mavic 3 Enterprise. And somewhere around those lines, that's about a full out kit with extra batteries is about $7,000.
So still affordable.
It's absolutely affordable. And if you're looking to at least start and do like a proof of concept, you could spend $10,000, right? You have everything you need and you could do a proof of concept and show what it can do. Biggest thing from my perspective too, that we did is record keeping. I have a full spreadsheet of every time we've deployed, what the outcome was, how many flights we had, how many drones we used, was it a call out, all this data.
It's like canine logs. Every time you're getting your dog out, you got to log all that stuff.
How many flights do you think you've had?
Me personally, or the unit?
Just
as a general?
the start of it.
We're over.
Everything.
I think we're over we're at almost 1,000 hours of flight time, including training, in our unit.
Wow,
it's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours of people flying.
Because let's be realistically that these things are launched in the air for, I don't know, a short amount of time, 10 minutes maybe to a couple hours. 10 to 30 minutes.
30.
Yeah. And to an hour, maybe 2 hours. So 1,000 plus hours. I mean, it's a lot. That's a long time.
I think our longest
it's like 5,000 flights.
Yeah. Our longest continuous mission, we flew 106 flights in a single call out.
Because battery lives on those are probably, how long on that little thing?
On this little thing, it's 5 minutes.
Oh, shit. So that's not a whole lot of time.
So, but on like the outdoor stuff, it ranges from 15 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait. But 5 minutes, when you think about it, doesn't sound long. It sounds very fast, but I picture this thing coming up into a house and slowly moving through. I feel like you could clear most of the house, right?
We can clear a 3,000 to 4,000 square foot within 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Because 5 minutes doesn't sound fast, but when you're moving around within a smaller area, that sounds reasonable.
Plenty of time to clear. The only time we really run into battery issues with this is if, let's say, we have a closed door and we want to watch that door. So generally what we'll do is we'll bring it out, swap the battery, go right back to that spot, make sure there's no change, and then just sit there and watch the door. That just gives us that ability. But that's the other part of it is battery management, power management, and being cognizant of what your aircraft's able to do.
You seem like the type that just go full throttle and just burn that battery.
Maybe
just send it.
Maybe about 10 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've ridden in a car with you.
Yeah.
I think you're full throttle, dude.
Yeah.
So where do you think drones are going to be in the future in police departments?
I think that drones are going to be a vital part of law enforcement from here on out. It's just a matter of how integrated the organization's going to let them be and the community is going to let them be. The community has a big input in how we use drones.
Oh yeah.
And we've done a lot of campaigning with both of our council members and our community members to say, hey, this is what we're using them for. And this is how, our biggest thing is that we want to gain their trust and show them, hey, we're using them for the correct things.
Yeah.
And so
this isn't Big Brother.
No, absolutely not. So our goal is that we can show them this is the good stuff it's done. And when people have seen the de-escalation that it's done, the way we've been able to identify where people are, maybe not use gas to get somebody out of a house. We have numerous times where just the drone's presence in a house has caused somebody to surrender.
Yeah.
So we haven't had to go any further than, hey, we see you in the house, even though we knew you were here and we told you we knew we were here. Well, now we have something else that's looking at you in the eye and they're like, okay, fine, I'll give up.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that either. That's
so
great.
It's really changed kind of the tactics of how everything operates. So moving forward, I think you're going to see more of them. I think the biggest issue I run into is finding people that are interested. Like it is a niche thing to be interested in. Not everyone comes into law enforcement and be like, I want to fly a drone. So finding those people that can get passionate about it because you want a passionate person. It's a perishable skill. It's ever changing in regulation and you want those people to stay on top of that. So our biggest goal is to find those motivated people to drive the program forward.
Yeah.
But I see more Chula Vista type programs coming out because now these organizations that never had an air unit before can now have an air unit.
Yeah, no kidding.
It provides them that option.
Well, I even picture like years to come when it's really like fine tuned that it's going to be a draw because, like canine, people want to be cops to be a canine. People want to be SWAT or they want to be a detective or they want to run the drones, like because military is that way. It's
Absolutely.
like, hey, I want to fly a drone.
I absolutely think that there will be a time where there's not autonomous drones, but these DFR programs are set up and kind of like the military where that flies drones from a Connex box somewhere. You can be in a real-time crime center as part of the real-time crime center team, flying your drone over a scene and providing that intel in that real time.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that too. I mean,
Dallas,
department's already doing it.
Yeah, Dallas PD actually has a full-time UAS team. So they have 5 guys assigned. Now they are mostly assigned to tactical stuff. So they actually do a 5-man UAS bump through a house.
No kidding. That's crazy.
They send 5 drones into a house.
That's crazy.
And they actually clear the house doing a 5-man clear through a house with drones before the actual humans
goes in.
That is rad.
To the house.
Yeah, I've learned a ton on this. This is awesome.
So
yeah.
this is
I
really
like it.
interesting.
I mean, dude, you know what? If it mitigates someone getting shot, killed, like bad guy and officer, like,
Yeah.
like why not do it? You know,
Absolutely. If it
yeah.
provides just that little bit more
Yeah.
intel that can change the outcome of something, it's silly not to do it.
and it's worth the money. I mean, honestly, before you told me the price of this stuff, I'll be honest, like I'm not super into it at our department. We have our own group of guys like yourself that are, but I thought they were a lot more expensive than that. I thought they, especially these mini ones, I thought they were a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
So to hear that they're only that much, I mean, I don't know. I mean, seriously, if you're listening to this and you guys don't have a drone program, can people like get a hold of you maybe, or
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
have questions, I don't know if that's okay with you.
Yeah, if they want to get a hold of you guys and you can
Filter it through you.
Yeah.
All right,
filter 'em my
cool.
way. Absolutely. I've been
Yeah,
more happy to talk to people.
Let's do that.
You could contact us through shotsfiredpodcast.org, submit that form
Yeah.
and contact us. And then
Send
we
us an
can
email.
contact.
Yeah, if you have questions, we'll get a hold of Nick and ask and answer it for you. But I think they're great programs. Like I said, man, I've seen them work so many times, especially in a SWAT or tactical environment, canine environment. I mean, they're money. I
Yeah.
mean, shit, if you're a handler and you have a drone out there with you, I mean, your odds of you catching somebody
It's huge.
has grown drastically.
Absolutely. And the safety that it provides everyone on the scene.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The community, it's huge. And then, we're talking about from a law enforcement perspective, like we've talked about tactical and searching, but missing people, like some of this, the general overwatch, we have big outdoor concert venues, being able to put a UAS up to check perimeters, to keep eyes out on things, like the general safety it provides overall.
That's a comforting
huge.
feeling.
Yeah.
If I was there to know
Yeah.
that that's happening.
Yeah.
Search and rescue
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, with us, we have a big river that flows through our town, like being able to use it when that happens, if we have a issue on the river, like it doesn't just come down to the tactical or those calls for service. There's some other sides of these things that are being used as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Real quick,
That's
what
awesome.
are the, I think a lot of people have questions about like, and I'm sure you know the answer to this, but people that personally own drones and like flying them, launching it from your front yard because it's the cool new toy that you got. Like, real quick, can you touch on the rules of that? Because
Yes.
we get
Yeah.
calls like that a lot.
Absolutely.
My neighbor's flying his drone over my house, like, and what are the rules for that?
So everybody that operates a drone, and it's what's called recreationally, right? If you got a drone for Christmas and you're like, hey, I'm going to go fly it in my backyard, take pictures of my kids, right? Or we're going to go on vacation. I want to take a picture of this waterfall. You're considered a recreational flyer. As a recreational flyer, you're required to get what's called a trust certificate. And basically it's an online test that the FAA puts on just so they can educate you on the rules of flying within the airspace, right? Because the feds came down a long time ago and said, hey, airspace is for everybody.
Yeah.
But we need to manage how it's done so it's safely done. And so the biggest thing if you are a recreational flyer is know what airspace you're in. And there's a ton of apps out there that you will tell you, hey, you're safe to fly here, or hey, you're not safe to fly here. This is controlled airport airspace. And so there's ones out there. AirMap is a good one. Aloft is another one. And then the FAA actually put one out called Before You Fly. And that's probably literally the most basic one of them all, right? So
Yeah.
the FAA is putting it out. It's probably fairly important to have. Most people that don't live near an airport, absolutely, they can pop a drone up and they can fly. Not a big deal. But there's a respect portion of it too. Respect your neighbors. Don't be flying over their houses unnecessarily. Like, hey, if you're flying down the street because you want to go take a picture of a cow in the field, hey, it is what it is. You're in national airspace. But you can't be flying.
You're creeping on your neighbors.
Don't be creeping on your
That's what
neighbors.
you're
There's
getting
actually in California, there's a penal code.
Yeah.
They've actually included peeping,
Yeah.
using a drone as peeping. So you can
Yeah.
actually arrest for that now.
Which,
Wow.
you know what, I'm all about, because who wants a drone flying over in your
Right.
backyard? Like
Exactly.
that is a super invasion of privacy in my
Yeah.
opinion.
There's some civil case law on the books in California too that was put in place out of LA. Well, because paparazzis were using them to go take
I bet.
pictures of the movie stars and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's there, but that's a civil case law. But legally, it's fairly open, but it comes down to a community of respect, right?
Yeah.
You want to respect the people you're flying around. You want to be able to do it. And the more respectful you are and the more we do it correctly, the less likely
Yeah.
that people are going to get involved.
It's
and
going to get
start-
less restrictive,
Correct.
or it'll get more restrictive,
Absolutely.
the more people behave.
Yeah.
So
Well, this has been awesome. We're going to ask you a question. You want to
boy.
leave anybody with any words of wisdom, but not yet.
Okay.
I want to ask you if you have what's your funniest memory of the academy?
Oh God.
of all three of us,
Yeah.
All three of us. I just remember it was like the first week I got gigged like 3 times.
Oh, really?
The first week. And I was like, I am not going to make it through this. Like, I'm just not. And I had Chad Egan next to me. He's like, you're going to do it. you're going to make it. You'll be fine. I was like, okay, I guess so. Mr. I've been in the military for my whole life.
Yeah.
What I got out of you, Mark?
Mr. Swole, Chad Egan.
Yeah. Mr. Swole, Chad
RoboCop,
Egan.
man.
Yeah. He's still
and this is not a dig on Kyle because Kyle was not much younger than I was because I was only
I don't know. I was
only 2 years older than you.
Really? Yeah, I was
Kyle still in
20.
his teens.
I know. I had like just turned 20.
I was 22.
Okay.
So
That
we
is
weren't,
young.
far
All
off.
right. Yeah.
But you looked more scared than I did.
Yeah. Oh, I was terrified.
But I was like, I must look a little bit better. I'm just as scared. He just shows it
Yeah.
more.
I think I weighed 90 pounds. Like, yeah, that was a wreck. I'm surprised I made it through.
And
but
then Mark, you were just a spaz in general, and you ran off
Still
of
is.
coffee,
Yes.
just
still
pure
is.
coffee. I don't know how. Yeah,
Mark thought he was having a heart attack before we even started the show. So we had to like check his heart rate, and he's always paranoid, but you're
We
good.
did,
You're
and
alive.
He
Nick
was-
saved me again.
he was
Just-
trying to get CPR.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to hit record on the camera so we can get that on video, throw that on YouTube if you were going to croak out on us, but he didn't. But
still around.
yeah, it is kind of funny. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the three of us were in the academy together, and then we're all kind of sitting here, and each one of us grew into like our own little niche in law enforcement. So
Yeah, no,
It's kinda
pretty
cool how-
It's pretty awesome.
yeah, kind of cool how it's all kind of turned out. I mean, gosh, I don't even think I've seen you since
No, I literally don't think I've seen
probably the academy, to be honest. So here we are, 16 years later.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm super stoked that how heavily you've got involved in this and the things that you've done for your department.
it. Yeah, thank you.
I have no doubt that other officers, you've probably mentored, through drone programs.
Yeah, we got quite a few.
Yeah. So I think that's super, super cool. You're saving a lot of people. The safety aspect alone, I really like it. Thanks for coming in here and showing and telling everybody kind of what drone programs are about, because, honestly, there's a lot of agencies that don't have them. They don't know what their capabilities are. I think some agencies are afraid to even touch them.
I think so too. I think
Because-
it's just because they don't know. It's
There's too many unknowns.
Yep.
I think they're afraid of the cost. And dude, it's sounding to me like the cost is totally reasonable to start drone programs.
It's got really the one thing I will say when you talk about words of wisdom, if you are going to start a program, make sure you plan ahead and you budget ahead. These programs are going to grow, and one of the biggest costs in the programs are batteries. The batteries go bad, and you got to pay for them. So make sure that if you're going to build a program out, that you have the funding set aside to keep the program growing.
Oh, that's a good point.
I had the opportunity to help start our real-time crime center, and that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I felt I made during that, is that we didn't quite set like a desired budget. Like, hey, this is our R&D budget, or this is what we need to continue to move this forward every year. We were fortunate that we got it this time around, and it's really helped grow the program. And so I know when I'm managing it, I go, okay, this is our set dollar amount. What do I need to buy to grow us? And what do I need to buy to sustain us and make sure that we continue to be successful?
Yeah.
And that's been real helpful.
Nice little perk of wisdom there.
Well, what do you want to leave everyone on words of wisdom? Is that your wisdom?
I think that's my wisdom.
That's a good one. I would not have thought that.
Yeah. And enjoy it. Have fun with it. I think one other thing that we didn't talk about that we've done with this is we actually created a 4-wheel drive vehicle.
No, really?
That it's just a remote control car with all the same technology in it.
Yeah.
And so it's just be imaginative.
Yeah. Technology is really growing in law enforcement. It's insane. I mean, dude, when we all first started, none of this existed.
No.
It just wasn't there. Like, it's just crazy where we are today with technology and where we're headed in law enforcement. So it's kind of like you got to either jump on the bandwagon or you're way behind the
Way
eight ball.
behind and you're not going to catch up.
Yeah. So awesome. I like it. Dude, thanks again for coming in.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Both of you.
Hey, if anybody's interested, Mark, we just wrapped up a class yesterday with you and your class, Officer Rescue. Good turnout for that, around 40-ish guys. If you guys are interested in hosting classes that we offer, head over to our website, fieldsurvivaltraining.com, and we can get set up with that. But do you have anything else to add? Or
I'm stoked you came in. It's been great to see you again. I haven't seen you in just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been great.
this
I
is-
really appreciate it.
You dropped a lot of knowledge, made it super interesting. So
Yeah,
thank
if you
you
have-
for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have people reach out, I'm more than happy to
Yeah.
talk to people and try to help them get their program started.
Yeah. Make sure you guys hit us up, shotsfiredpodcast.org. You can shoot us an email if you have questions for drones. We'll get it over to Nick and get an answer for you. So until next time, guys, stay safe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
See ya.